everyone. This is Melanie Headley. You are listening to ToRAISE Questions Doula podcast. I am sitting here with the wonderful Thérèse Hakoun. She is the executive director of toLabor, which is an international doula training and certifying organization. Hi, Thérèse.
Hey, Melanie. How are you?
I'm good. I sound like a frog today. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you sound beautiful and lovely, no matter how your voice sounds.
Oh, you're the best.
Yes. So today,
I'm so excited about today. Today we are going to be talking to one of my colleagues.
Yes.
One of Thérèse's students, about circumcision.
Yeah.
And her name is Melissa Yeager. She's wonderful.
She lives in Richmond, so she's actually going to be in the studio with us, and she's going to talk about circumcision and her journey with some decisions she made around being a doula and how she would deal with that specific issue. So I think we're going to have a very interesting conversation.
I can't wait.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
All right, everyone, stay tuned.
So I'm really excited, Melanie, I know you are too, that we have a wonderful sponsor right now.
I am thrilled, over the moon.
So it is Latched Mama.
This local to Richmond company is amazing.
And they're international, though, as far as what where their product can go.
Grown in Richmond, I should say.
Grown in Richmond, yeah.
They were grown in Richmond. And I've been so fortunate to meet and encounter and to get to know Melissa Wirt, who owns Latched Mama and dreamed up this idea. And she's just such a phenomenal person.
She is. She's such a great person, and turning into an amazing businesswoman, which I think she probably already was, but I don't think she knew how.
Always with the baby on her.
That's
always
it.
with the baby on her chest.
And so what is Latched Mama?
So it is a beautiful line of nursing clothing. And, this wasn't around when I was nursing my own babies.
Me either.
I always had to be really tricky. I would wear a nursing tank and then another shirt. And so I would have to be hot with layers and pull it up and pull it down and then a nursing bra underneath. And now she's made these really, you should feel how soft and stretchy and thin
I
these
know.
shirts are. Oh, I sleep in one. I'm not even nursing a baby.
Right, I know.
But she makes these gorgeous dresses that it doesn't look like nursing clothing.
I know. I remember Melissa, which I gave her a little bit of a hard time. 1 week after her last baby was born, she has 3 kids. She was out at a function that we were all at.
Yeah, you have heard her voice
that's right.
on this podcast
That's
before.
right. She was at that RVA birth evening that we were podcasting from. Anyway, she had on a really nice dress.
She looked amazing.
She did. And it was a breastfeeding, one of her dresses.
She looked hot.
Yes. And, you can wear whatever you want when you're breastfeeding. But why her shirts, her sweatshirts, her
hoodies are so cute.
Yeah. The dresses are just really nice and so practical.
Yes.
So we are really happy to have Latched Mama as a sponsor of the podcast. You can look at their website at latchedmama.com. They have a very wonderful Facebook page as well, Facebook/Latched Mama.
And they're coming out with a periodical as well.
Yes, they're going to have a magazine.
Yeah.
They check out their clothing, pass it on to your clients, get involved in their Facebook page. They have a great blog also. So thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Hi, Melissa.
Hey, Melissa.
We're so glad to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me here to the podcast. I'm really excited to be here.
So, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? We introduced you just briefly in the intro, but we'd love to hear from you.
My name is Melissa Yeager, and I have lived here in Richmond for 9 years. You can probably tell that I'm not from here.
Yes.
I'm British and Canadian, but mostly British. But I moved to Richmond about 9 years ago, and I have been a birth doula here in Richmond for almost 5 years, and a lactation educator for a couple of years too.
Mm-hmm.
I live here with my family, my husband and my 3 lovely boys who are all under 6.
Yeah.
So my house is chaotic and noisy, and escaping to do something lovely like this is really wonderful.
Well, yes, I'm so glad. I'm so glad you're here. So we invited you to talk about the topic circumcision, and we feel like it's a really important part of being a doula is offering our clients all their options and choices, and that includes for the pregnancy, the labor and birth, and then following into the postpartum care. And we talk about it, as you may remember, in workshops about the recovery period being so important, and making sure our clients prior to going into labor have all the information that they need about what will happen afterwards. And circumcision is one of those things that they may face if they're having a boy unexpectedly. It can really be, for some people, they don't find out prior to that. So they're not maybe thinking about circumcision prior to the birth. If they have a boy, the knowledge of having a boy, they may be considering that. But then again, we know people don't. So you are here because we know that you have made a decision yourself as a doula on how you feel you would like to address circumcision, or how you address circumcision with your clients. So I'm kind of just going to let you tell your story.
Thank you. One of the most important things about being a doula is that you don't get to make any decisions, that you provide your clients with the very best information that you can, and then they make the decisions, and you support their decisions, and you help them to negotiate what that means. And I found out very quickly when I started working as a doula that I found the topic of circumcision enormously difficult.
And why so?
It's not what my people do, I could say, as a starting point. In the UK, only about 6% of men are circumcised, and it's mostly the Jewish and Muslim population. So it wasn't a topic that I was really familiar with until I moved here and started having my own children.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something I looked into in any detail until I had my own children. We didn't find out whether we were having boys or girls each time, but we did research this decision. And my husband and I came to it from different perspectives. He grew up here.
Oh, he's American.
He's American,
Mm-hmm.
Yep. He grew up here in the United States and assumed that we would. And I grew up in the United Kingdom and had never really thought about it because it's not an issue.
Right.
There.
It's a non-issue.
It's a non-issue there. My husband and I very quickly were on the same page. After a little bit of research, we decided that if we had a boy, we would leave him intact.
Mm-hmm.
And it was after having him that I trained and started working as a birth doula. So I had the experience of going through that decision myself,
right,
doing some research, making a decision and following through.
And working with your husband.
Yes.
Because that's something that really, you can address. Partners are so important in this part of the decision making, like all things, but they can have a different perspective than often the woman, if it's a woman, man-woman couple,
Mm-hmm.
different perspectives.
Absolutely. And it has been my experience that regardless of the makeup of the couple, they can have very different
Yes.
Perspectives and different opinions. And in the first birth I worked where this became an issue, I was utterly unprepared. It was a very difficult situation, and it was also a birth where the birth came much sooner than we expected, so there hadn't been time. You remember me phoning you about this
too,
afterwards.
Actually, I don't. Yeah, but I think that's a finish, and then I'll put some 2 cents in there.
So I did not have time with these particular parents to provide all the information that I would have provided otherwise, and so they felt rushed into making a decision themselves, and I felt rushed that I didn't have time to give them all of the information I felt they needed to make an informed decision. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't really matter what their decision was now, but I felt that I handled it really badly.
And how... In what way? I mean, because you weren't prepared?
Because I wasn't prepared.
Mm-hmm. I
hadn't thought about how somebody else making a decision about their own child could floor me emotionally.
And I do, if this is okay, I do remember when you called and you were really distraught about the experience, and it said volumes about how you personally felt and your awareness, though, at the same time that you're a doula and that your personal feeling can't necessarily dictate how things are going to be professionally, but it was really obvious that this was a struggle, and you learned something from it as far as I'm going to prepare people better.
That's exactly right. And it took me some years after that to figure it out, honestly. I worked with a number of clients over the coming years, and in each instance I provided as full information as I could, updating as things changed.
And what does that mean, full information? Were you giving, because this is something that for the doulas who are listening, some feel very strongly, as you do, about that they would prefer that the boys be left intact. Mm-hmm. Others have circumcised their sons and feel like that was a good decision and they have no regrets around it. So therefore it really is a non-issue to them. They feel like, well, if that's what somebody wants, that's just what they want. And for others, they totally are not aware, like you weren't as aware the first time around, like that this could be given. Based on the fact that doulas are supposed to be giving balanced information, how were you originally educating? Were you giving both sides of the story or one side of the story?
That actually is pretty straightforward to answer, because it became very quickly my professional opinion, setting my emotions on one side as much as it's ever possible to do so. Professionally, all of the rigorous scientific literature points in the same direction. So I could say to people, here's information on potential medical benefits of circumcision. What do you think? Here's information on medical benefits of leaving intact. Here's information on ethical issues to consider, and then leave it with the clients. And I tried my very best. I never said, up until one key experience, which I talked to you about immediately afterwards, I didn't ever say, my boys are intact, or anything like that. But I talked about informed consent. And,
were you
and
asked
like
that question?
Yes.
And so you did volunteer that?
No.
Ever? Never?
No.
Right.
It does. The answer to that question doesn't matter.
Good. And that's something that's really hard for people to, I think doulas are asked so frequently, well, what did you do? Whether it be this topic or so many other topics, what did you do? How do you feel about it? And the answer always, as I've said, so it sounds redundant, but it doesn't matter what I decided. What can I do to help you make the best decision?
Right. Exactly. And I know, some people would tell me their decision and some people would not tell me their decision. And I knew over the next couple of years, some people looked at the information that I gave them and decided to leave their boys intact. Some people didn't look at the information I gave them, which is their absolute right, and decided either way. Some people looked at what I gave and decided to circumcise.
Right.
So, sometimes I felt that I had done a good thing, that I had brought people to a place where they could decide to leave their boys intact that they might not have done otherwise. And sometimes I felt that I had personally failed, which is not something a doula should ever be
Exactly.
feeling, because it's not our job to persuade people. So it was always a difficult line to walk,
Absolutely.
taking that approach.
And I just want to...
It's not our job.
It's not our job, and it's part of the learning curve of being a doula that for some really, really don't get it.
Right.
And it's really important that we get it or draw boundary lines.
Right.
Because we can't influence people with their decisions as much as we may want to, and who hasn't felt that way? I mean, I just want you to know Melanie is here, but we're sharing a mic with Melissa.
Yes, and I love listening to, first of all, Melissa's accent is so wonderful. So everything you say sounds beautiful. But yeah, I just love hearing. I've also been in the same boat with, and I'm sick. That's why I sound like this, which is why I'm also trying not to share the mic too much. But been in the same boat, with vaccines and how long did you breastfeed,
right.
And keeping your boys intact and all of that in class as well as doula services. And it's hard, but you just kind of...
You have to negotiate it.
You just turn it right back around.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, but it's so important because you don't want people making decisions based off of what you did.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So I'm going to, before we finish this up, which we're not nearly through, I want, if you can remember, and if you can't, we'll just post it later, some of the resources that you did give to people for, all sides of it, because I think that's also, it's an important aspect of a lot of doulas are like, well, I don't even know where to look for this stuff, or I'm too afraid that that's too militant, or that's too wishy-washy. What, that evidence-based information.
Absolutely. I try really hard not to use any of the popular websites.
That's
so everything I send out...
Based on, why do you feel that way?
Because they're perceived as biased and ill-informed.
Yeah, which they're not necessarily.
But
they're probably very good.
They're perceived that way. So I send out the statements of national medical organizations from all over the world, including the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics.
Which has a mixed message.
It does. It does have a mixed message as of 2012.
Yeah,
yes.
It wasn't that way, yeah.
I send out a select number of scholarly articles, both from medical and ethical journals, and then statistics gleaned from both of those places.
That's great.
I think some of the language used in the more popular websites can be both divisive and shaming, and I don't like that. I don't use it, and I don't think it's very effective.
And I think that, again, is very, very thoughtful of you. And I think that is something for those who are listening have to think about with all of the information that we give out is we want people to have the facts.
Right.
I mean, I always think of this old TV show that was on, and it was a cop would be asking the witness for information. They'd be going on and telling their story, and he would just go, just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts. I think that's it, because, and that decisiveness, this is a hot topic for people. It gets very emotional.
It does.
Like many things, this is one of those things. And I think that's really wise. So we will include some of the resources.
I just want to say, sorry, I'm going to interrupt because I just stole the mic. But it's also a newborn decision. And so, as we're talking to clients about the vitamin K vaccine, the vitamin K injection, the hepatitis B vaccine, the eye ointment, the erythromycin. The cord, exactly. So it's just one more newborn decision that
rooming in
should be discussed.
Absolutely, because those are the things that they're going to suddenly, being that the focus is so much on labor and birth. And I've heard this so many times from women. Then their babies were born and they were handed their baby, and all these things are then happening, and they're like, okay. And then later on they feel like, I didn't know. And maybe if I had known, I wouldn't have made, or if I had known, I wouldn't have let this happen. And I'm not just talking about circumcision. I'm talking about everything. So that is why, like Melanie brought up, it's so important that it be discussed.
Absolutely. I had somebody tell me when I first drew my boundary, which we'll get to in a minute, I had somebody tell me that this was none of my concern as a birth doula, that it happened after the birth, and so my job was done, and that's not true at all.
And as an organization, I will say we don't agree with that either, and you know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the couple of years went by where you were doing this with your clients, but still struggling.
Yeah, I did still struggle. And it was only a handful of times, honestly, that it was an issue, where I worked with parents who had a boy and decided to circumcise. Sometimes I didn't know. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they told me. And sometimes they told me in the oddest of ways. I had one client who I went to make the postpartum visit, and their son was circumcised less than 12 hours after he was born.
That was fast.
It was, and it was the second time we had worked together. Such really, really lovely people. And we knew that we were on different sides of this debate. And she said, you know, we came home from the hospital the second day, and he was pretty shouty after his circ. And I was like, I bet he was.
Yeah.
And there was nothing else I could say.
Right.
I had given them all my best information, and they had made their best decision.
Right.
And the fact that their son had been in pain, I had no answer.
Right. Except for to listen to it and hold it for them for that moment.
Exactly. Which
is what we do.
Yes.
So then what happened?
Then I met this incredible woman who I'm going to name.
Okay.
Paige Jansak, who was in Richmond for a brief
time. Hi, Paige.
Hi, Paige. I know you're listening.
Yes, I do too.
She was in Richmond for a brief time, and she said to me, you know, you don't have to work with people who are planning to circumcise. And my jaw dropped. I was just completely stunned by this suggestion. And I had really struggled each time that I had worked with a family who had gone ahead and planned to circumcise. I felt like I had failed, which is not something a doula does.
You felt like you had failed the baby?
I felt like I had failed the baby.
Okay, just to clarify it.
Yes, I felt like I had failed the baby. You know, I had worked so hard on each instance to support the mother and to support her hopes for bodily integrity, her own body.
Right.
And to support her hopes for autonomous decision making over what happened to her during pregnancy and labor and birth. And I had utterly failed to secure those things for the baby. Bodily integrity and autonomy.
Right. Okay.
And I was heartbroken every time. And when Paige suggested that I could just step aside and draw a boundary and say, you know what? I am not the right doula for you. If that's your decision, I cannot support it wholeheartedly. That is the job of a doula, to support your decisions and to help you advocate for yourself. I can't do it.
So this is something we've talked about in workshops that, and so I'm going to say it to all that are listening, we do have the right as a practitioner to decide what our boundary lines are. And what I always put out there is, you know, breastfeeding is another one that people feel very, very strongly about based on all of the education around it, that it is the optimal choice for the baby and for the mother. And I have known doulas in the past who have struggled with the woman who, not because she didn't produce enough milk, but she just has chosen for the convenience of her life, which is, I'm not saying that in a negative way, but just that they are going to give the baby formula, have really struggled. And what I have always said to people is, you have the right to make your boundary lines, and that my input for all that are listening is that step outside of those boundary lines. So first, before you box yourself in, and think, can I continue to work with this? Can I make a difference in these people's lives? Like, maybe they don't want to breastfeed because they don't have a good understanding of what breastfeeding is. Or the woman who says, I want to have an epidural, but I still want a doula. A lot of doulas struggle with that. Like, well, I don't feel good about that. Well, is there misinformation there? Could you help change the course of things, though that shouldn't be your goal, but could you step back in there and realize, well, I have an opportunity here. And the other part of that is always, what am I to learn from this experience? Like, what could I benefit from being a part of something that I feel very personally attached to, but I could possibly learn personally and professionally how to handle that. So, but if you feel I can't do that, then you should have your boundary lines, because that's the integrity of yourself and the integrity that you have to give to your clients, keeping that whole thing intact. So for my perspective of, then you're going to tell us what you did to create that boundary line. I know that you did, right from the beginning, feel like you wanted a boundary line. Nobody had just said it to you clearly, but you did step back in. You did what we talk about. You felt a boundary line was needed, but you were like, okay, I can do this. And you went back in, but then you reached that place that said, I can't any longer. I can't participate in this.
I really felt as though I would not be able to continue in birth work.
Right.
I felt it that strongly. And so it was a gift from Paige to raise this idea to me. And by the time, it was just last year that I made this boundary for myself. So I had been a doula for 4 years and supported a reasonable number of families in that time. But I really felt that I could not keep going. I would have to stop being a doula, which I love.
Right.
And it resonated that strongly with me. And so I talked to my husband, and I said, this is going to cost me clients.
Yes.
And what happens now is, if somebody approaches me and it becomes clear that their choice is to circumcise, I refer them to somebody else.
And how do you make that? So let's clarify how you created that boundary line.
Okay. I wrote a blog post announced on my very quiet blog,
which we also posted on the toLabor Facebook page. And so if you search for it,
it was in January last year.
January
perhaps,
2015?
Or maybe even later than that.
So if you put in probably Melissa Yeager, Yeager's name in our search part of the Facebook page, or Circumcision, it'll show up somewhere. And it was a very well-written blog.
Thank you. I simply announced there that I would no longer be working with people choosing to circumcise their baby. And after some discussion with my husband and with you, ToRAISE, it's also part of my Doula Match profile. Doula Match is a website where people can go to find a doula available for their due date. And on my profile there, it says that for cultural reasons, I don't work with people choosing to circumcise their baby. I'm very happy to refer you to another doula.
Right.
Not everybody reads that.
No, right.
So I do fairly often still end up at interview.
So it's interview. So a person calls you and says, "Hey, we would love to talk to you about potentially being our doula. We'd love to set up a consultation with you." Where, when, how do you? Where in that time period? Is it on the phone call? Is it in the interview? When do you bring up this, and how do you bring it up?
I usually bring it up at interview, because then I have the opportunity to meet people where they are.
Right.
I experimented with putting it in my email response to a request for interview or on the phone. But I have found it works best to meet people and talk and establish some kind of relationship, although it may be a brief one, before bringing it up. And then usually I simply say, "Are you aware of my circumcision policy?" That I don't work with people planning to circumcise their baby. And sometimes people haven't even thought about it.
Right.
And sometimes people have a very clear decision. Sometimes they're having a girl.
Right.
And
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And then if people say, yes, we're planning to circumcise, then I'll say, I'm very sorry, I can't work with you. I'd be very happy to refer you to another doula and hand over some names.
And is their response, well, why don't you?
Sometimes.
But not always.
But not always.
But if they say why, then what is your response back?
The first time I got that question, I messed it up spectacularly and then called you. I think I spoke about emotional torture on my own part. The first time I answered that question, I just vomited out this huge, long, too personal response. And now I simply say, for cultural reasons, for emotional and professional reasons, I'm unable to support parents making that decision. I'm happy to send you information. I'm happy to talk about it further if you would like to, but if this is your choice, I can't walk with you.
I think that is an excellent way to respond. Have you ever thought to add in, and I'm not sure it's the right thing, I'm just wondering if you've ever thought about it, that you work, just as you expressed before, you're working for the autonomy of that person's right to be able to, the woman, that their birth experience, and you see that it's the same in a child's.
I have, yes, when people have asked me to elaborate,
okay,
I do say exactly that.
Because I think that's important, and I think I agree, if they want more, like, well, I don't really get it, or what are you talking about? I think that would be something, because I've been at births many a time through the years where people have made home birth decisions where they really want that true autonomy as much as possible, as you get more so. Really conscious decisions in the hospital of everything that they want and good health and all these things. And then they choose circumcision, which again is what they have the right to choose. But it feels a little bit strange if they haven't been approached on the fact that what is the difference between you and the baby, just to give them pause to consider it. Because I think we have to give pause to consider many different things.
Well, when I wrote my original blog post about this decision, I drew the exact parallel between routine infant male circumcision and routine episiotomy in birth. And I talked about, how it might feel to be given a routine episiotomy with no medical necessity and no consent, and reflected that back to routine infant circumcision. And I actually don't talk about that in my class.
Right, okay.
But I have talked about it a number of times, and I have found that parallel to really resonate with other doulas. A number of people, both people I knew and people from all around the country, after toLabor shared it, wrote to me saying, I hadn't thought of it that way before, but the parallel that resonates with people isn't between male circumcision and female circumcision. It's between male circumcision and autonomy in childbirth.
Right. Yeah, I think that, again, there's so many reasons why people do choose to circumcise, and why those who choose to allow their babies to stay intact. I'm just not sure many people think, period, including with the intact. I mean, people say, well, yeah, we're going to, we're not doing circumcision. And my question always is, well, why? Because I want to hear, have you really thought this out? Or is this something that your friend said, oh, you shouldn't circumcise the baby? Well, that sounds great if that's what you think, but what is it just a gut feeling? That's awesome. But is it just because you haven't given any consideration to it? I mean, we want people to be active participants in their decision making, not just because someone said it is a good idea or it's not a good idea.
Absolutely.
So you created this boundary line. You made it really clear, which I think is really important, and right from the get-go, because you don't want these people to hire you and then bam, this is not happening.
Right.
Just out of curiosity, has anybody hired you who thought they wanted to circumcise but after a brief discussion with you thought, oh, I hadn't thought about that. And then in the end, you ended up working with them and they left the baby intact?
Yes. In short, yes. I don't think that's a very common occurrence. The very interesting thing that has happened since I drew this boundary is that I have all kinds of clients from all over the world who have, who live in Richmond, Virginia. But I have a tremendous number of foreign-born clients having boys, and then American clients having girls. So I've had in the last year, I've had clients from all over the world, from all over Europe and Asia, and the Caribbean, and South America, from places where it's norm to leave baby boys intact.
Okay. So you feel comfortable with the decision you've made?
I do feel comfortable with it. And at the same time, I lost the opportunity to give information that might point people towards leaving their boys intact.
And I think that is what I speak about when I say step outside of your boundary lines, because it could be an opportunity, but you can't continue to do that work thinking you're going to change people's minds. It can't be your motivation, but it's this fine line of, without you, would somebody are they getting that information? But this is why we're also doing this, is that to remind doulas, this is part of our work. I mean, if it's not yours, as personally, professionally, like you feel like, oh, there's just too many topics, you can have files about these very simply. You don't even have to discuss it. Just it's part of your package that you send out to your clients, give to your clients, so that they have all the information. Or make sure they're taking childbirth education classes where this is being addressed as well, so that it is being addressed in one way or the other. But going back to your own personal and professional experience with this, but really it's the personal, it was just too difficult for you to do. So you have to trust that other people are giving that information. And in the end, the hard part that we all have to learn is we can't rescue, we can't save, we can't give information, we can't help every single person. And even if you do, that doesn't mean your way is the right way and their way is the wrong way. And that's a humbling experience. So I think your boundary line is actually very appropriate, because you've taken yourself out of it. It's no longer, it's clear, it's transparent, it's no longer a conflict. This is the way it is. And I think that that's very appropriate. And it's something for people to think of with all of the things that they're offering to their clients, is leaving that personal out of it, because it really isn't about us. It's really about that person. So what did you do, though? I know you've moved further on with this based on, I think, your desire for people to have information, even if you're not working with them.
Absolutely. So also through Paige, I learned about the possibility to take a class, to teach a class. And Paige linked me up with somebody in Arizona who has for years been teaching a class, which is very simply called Foreskin and Circumcision, Making an Informed Decision. And it's entirely evidence-based. And it doesn't refer to any of those popular websites we mentioned before. It's different here than anywhere else because it's tailored to our local population.
Different, you mean in Richmond?
Different in Richmond.
How you teach it?
Yes.
And the information.
Yes. I don't have statistics for Arizona in my class.
Right.
I have statistics for Virginia and things like that. And also, the person who designed the class initially and who teaches the educator class, she lives in Arizona, where there's a very low circumcision rate. And where people circumcise for different reasons than they do here. So I have incorporated into my class, for example, a discussion of religion, which isn't present in her class. And then the maps are different and the statistics are different to reflect our geographic area.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so you offer these classes. Are you getting people are people attending your classes?
Yes. I initially has started offering the class every month,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's too often at the moment. Although I also haven't been publicizing it too widely yet, because I've been wanting to sort of iron out the kinks.
Gotcha. Because this is fairly new for you.
Yes, I taught it publicly for the first time in January.
Okay.
And here we are in May. So I've moved to offering it every other month
Okay.
instead of every month. Although I've also offered it privately in people's homes if they either were uncomfortable to come to a public class or the timing was wrong
Okay.
for them to come to one of the public classes.
So you've been putting the word out. How though?
Through doulas
Mm-hmm.
and childbirth educators, and also through hospitals where people have said that is okay. And there's also been a strange sort of hiatus because the location has moved a couple of times and is about to move again. And so originally I had flyers printed, which I intended to send to all the pediatricians and OB offices and everything, but they have the wrong place on. So once the location finally settles, then I will send out flyers and hope to attract a wider audience.
So do you have kind of overview that you could share with what is covered? And I am curious about the religious aspect of how you deal with it, because there are people, and I have been with many a person who is Jewish and has felt that this is part of their faith and they believe very strongly in it. I have also been with not many, but a few Jewish people who are very devout in their belief of their, their practice of their religion, but they have chosen not to circumcise based on facts otherwise. So, yeah, what do you talk about in the class and religion being part of that?
Okay. The class covers several different topics. So it starts off with an overview of what circumcision is, and talks about how the penis develops and how the foreskin develops in both males and females. A lot of people don't know that
right.
Women have foreskin too. Most
women don't know a lot of things about their vagina, the clitoris, or anything else related to that part of their body.
This is the truth.
Yes.
Yes. So we talk about that, and then we talk about what circumcision is, what it removes, and what that means for normal biological function of the penis. We have a history of circumcision, why it became predominantly normal in this country in particular. And then there are some pretty graphic slides illustrating with photographs the three main methods of infant male circumcision in this country. We talk then about the potential medical benefits, which the AAP really touted in their 2012 statement, and the possible medical risks and complications. And then the class wraps up with a discussion of legal, ethical, and religious questions, which different people sometimes need to consider.
So legal.
Legal, we draw attention to the disparity between males and females in this country. Female circumcision, or it's not usually called by that name in this country, but female circumcision has been illegal here since 1997. Even making a symbolic pinprick in the clitoris is illegal here, and it's also illegal to take a female out of the country for the purposes of circumcision. So men and women are treated very differently on the question of genital integrity.
Okay. And so then ethically?
Ethically, we talk about the human right to bodily autonomy, which is a human right, and raise various questions about informed consent in life in general. And with this topic, the question of whose consent specifically is necessary. And I have had people tell me in public debate, this is my baby, it's my penis, for example. And some people feel that really strongly. They make decisions about all the other things we talked about vaccines, for example, about feeding, about when
sleeping,
the lights are turned out, and all of that kind of thing.
Religion.
Absolutely. but ethical questions relating to whose body it is, who gets to make decisions about that body and how it will function later in life.
And then religion.
Religion, we talk about Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, and the different ways that they present circumcision. Judaism is actually pretty straightforward because there's a clear law.
Covenant.
And exactly, a covenant, and people feel very strongly about it. So I talk about that, and I talk about its importance. And I also say there's a small but growing movement within Judaism towards leaving baby boys intact, and that there's an alternative ceremony to the bris, which is called a Brit Shalom. The nearest practitioner for us is in Virginia Beach, but she does travel. And I just lay it out there as a possibility. Islam, we talk about the lack of a direct command. It's not a Quranic requirement, but rather a cultural
agreement.
So we talk about that a little bit. And with Christianity, we talk about New Testament references to circumcision, especially from St. Paul. This is very brief. There's 2 slides on the whole topic. But one thing that I also stress is the difference in the meaning of circumcision in Old Testament times and now. The norm for circumcision in Old Testament times was the removal of the overhanging tip of the foreskin. It was only in about 140 AD that a transition was made to removing the entire foreskin and exposing the entire glands. So I talk about if the goal for circumcision is obeying a religious covenant, following the law of the Bible or the Torah, then we should really look at what circumcision meant at that time. I do also talk about circumcision in the discussion of circumcision itself. We talk about who does it and what the choices are, and what the options are for pain relief, and what the different experiences might be for a baby who is taken to a urologist at 4 weeks of life, for example, as opposed to being circumcised by a no doubt very caring resident in the hospital at 24 or 48 hours of life.
Or obstetrician.
Or pediatrician.
Or a pediatrician.
We talk about, taking your baby to somebody who specializes in penises.
Right.
rather than in female anatomy. So that parents who do come out of my class and choose to circumcise are empowered to make the best possible decisions that they can.
And for pain relief and comfort. And aftercare. Because I remember receiving a call one time, this was early on in my work, where a woman she was beside herself because the baby was incessantly crying, and also there was a lot of bleeding. And I'm not a medical professional, but it was like, you need to address this with somebody as quickly as possible, only because it could be. She was not prepared. She felt like, I don't know if this bleeding is the appropriate or more. I don't know how to comfort my baby. She was just caught in this terrible situation of watching her baby. And she really hadn't been given good instructions around it, basic instructions, but she needed someone like me just to say, call them.
Right.
But prior to that, it would have been better had she had more information.
Yes.
Yeah. So people may walk out of your class feeling that they still want to circumcise.
Yes.
And or that for religious reasons, they feel strongly that they will move forward as well.
Yes. And, and I've had people who I've talked to, on internet forums, for example, come away saying that they want to circumcise for the potential medical benefits. I actually had somebody say, for example, one of the potential medical benefits of circumcision is the reduction in the likelihood of penile cancer from a very, very tiny number, 0.2 per 100,000. To an even tinier number. That was a good enough reason for her.
Right.
That reduction from one tiny number to another tiny number, to come out and say, I'm doing this to protect my child. And now I can do it in as caring and gentle a way as possible.
And do you cover foreskin care?
Yes, absolutely. Leave it alone.
Yeah.
Yes, I give out cards in my class, double-sided cards that were created by Ashley Truman, who also created the educator class. And it has caring for an intact penis on one side and caring for a circumcision wound on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And you really, in Richmond, the circumcision rate, in Virginia, rather, the circumcision rate is about 66%.
Wow.
And so there are an awful lot of pediatricians and nurses and grandparents who don't know what to do with an intact penis and who think that you must retract the foreskin or clean under it or something like that. And you can really do terrible damage if you don't know. So part of being a good educator is teaching parents how to not only look after their child, but advocate for their child with a daycare provider,
right,
or a pediatrician.
Or the pediatrician.
And that's something that we've gone through as a family ourselves, educating our pediatrician.
What are the other medical reasons that are given to circumcise? Because you said legal, ethical, and religious,
Mm-hmm.
but there's medical as well.
Yeah, actually, no national organization in the world, including the AAP, recommends circumcision. The AAP says that...
American Academy of Pediatrics.
Says that the potential medical benefits are sufficient that this should be a choice for parents and that insurance companies should pay for it. Basically, I paraphrase, where it's chosen. The top one that everybody always talks about is HIV.
Right. I was just going to bring it up.
Right. And that research is based in sub-Saharan Africa,
right,
where population levels of HIV are really high, 30%.
Yes.
And where some 4 studies have shown a decreased rate of female to male HIV infection amongst circumcised men. And the headline given to this research finding was circumcision reduces HIV transmission by 60%. That is a huge number. And people jump on it. Who wouldn't want to protect their child from HIV?
Right.
But that's the relative reduction in risk. The actual reduction in risk in a population where the level of HIV is 30% is 1.3%, and it's not to zero.
Right.
The reduction of risk is not to zero.
And do they, and I know that this is also gets into a whole nother topic related to that, but
Mm-hmm.
condom use will reduce it to just about zero.
And that's exactly the point that I make. Because the risk isn't reduced to zero, circumcised men must still wear condoms,
right,
to avoid the risk of infection with
right.
HIV. And in any case, from everything I've read, translating research in sub-Saharan Africa to the United States
right.
doesn't make much sense. In the United States, the primary methods of spreading HIV are male-to-male sex and sharing needles. And circumcision hasn't been shown to reduce the transmission of HIV in either of those 2 ways. Plus, the United States, with a relatively high proportion of circumcised men, has higher rates of HIV than countries like the United Kingdom or Norway or Germany, where very few boys are circumcised. If there were a causal relationship, we would expect countries with fewer, with fewer numbers of circumcised boys to have lower rates of HIV, and they don't.
Well, I feel like what you've done with your class is give that opportunity for people to really have the information. And I think that there are many people, this is my gut feeling, there will be a lot of people who will never take your class.
Absolutely.
Because they will feel like it is a class just to convince you to leave your child intact. And that's a shame. But that's how things work in life. That should never stop you from doing what feels right to you. And I strongly recommend this kind of thought process with everybody who's listening about all of the issues that we have to deal with during the entire pregnancy year with our clients.
I have to say, I sat in on Melissa's class. I audited it as a doula, and I learned so much so that I'm able to talk better now and more informed with my clients about circumcision. I always had a little spiel to open a conversation, but definitely have the more facts behind it is great. But the class that I sat through, there was one couple in there, and so there was one man in the room, and I think we all felt a little bad for him. And they went on to hire me as their doula, and they went on to keep their son intact, where their first baby had been circumcised, and it made a huge difference for them. And as far as Therese, you saying, not everyone will take the class, that's definitely true. But I've also heard from other people that the people who are taking the class are spreading the word.
Yeah.
And so
that's how it happens.
Yeah. And so I have another client who now is researching urologists, so there are little things too that are changing just because, just because you're not seeing everyone in the community taking it, you're making differences, just
in a trickle way.
Yeah. Casting that net a little wider.
Last two things. It's actually one and A and two. Very commonly people say to you, well, I was circumcised, so I want my child to look like me. Mm-hmm. What's just your quick response to that?
There's two aspects to that. One is that's the absolute primary indicator of whether a boy will be circumcised in this country. The circumcision status of the father. 80% of circumcised fathers will circumcise sons for that reason. Mm-hmm.
And I would assume, can I interrupt with this? The 60% circumcision rate, is that what's currently happening, or is that of the male population, we have males, adults, 60%?
No, that's current. That was from the most recent numbers I could pull were from 2012, and it's probably slightly greater than that, because that's the number of boys circumcised in hospitals, and some will be circumcised afterwards as well. That's specific to Virginia, and it really matters where you're born. Right. If you go to West Virginia, it's 87%. If you go to North Carolina, it's just around 50%. And then,
so do we know what the population percentages of males in our country who are circumcised? And I was going to say in the childbearing years, but that goes all the way till they die. But because if that, I would assume the majority of the people who you are encountering at this time who are having babies in their 20s, 30s, early 40s are circumcised.
The men themselves, yes.
Yes. So that makes sense where that would dictate. So, that's your first. Okay, so, and then.
So my first answer is that's why a lot of people choose to do this.
Right.
And then it really depends on the rapport I have with the couple. I might say something like, did you spend a lot of time as a child comparing your penis with your father's?
Right.
And we also draw the male-female comparison. Would you require your daughter to have breast surgery to make her breasts look like her mother's?
Right. Okay.
I have a couple of pictures in the slides, of a very heavily tattooed father with a little boy with pristine skin. They don't look anything like each other. Mm-hmm. We don't expect them to. It's only in this one aspect of only male genitalia where we think the boy should match the father.
And what about, did you have something?
Yeah, I also talk about the locker room.
Yeah, because that was my next thing, because that was going to be my second question, was very commonly it said, well, I'm worried about my son being made fun of in the locker room.
Yes. And there's different answers to that too, that might be in times gone by, in the 50s or even in the 80s. If you leave your son intact, he might be the only one in the locker room. But now he's going to be, depending on your circle, a solid third, maybe half of the boys would match him. I'm still not certain how much time boys in locker rooms spend looking at each other.
Well, here's a response. I will say this, a response that was given to a mom by their son when they asked that question, because their son was in middle school, and asked, is this an issue with you when you're in the locker room? And this young boy said, if a guy is looking at my penis, that's more of the issue than me being left intact. Right. Like, if they are checking me out, I would be saying, what are you checking me out for? Right. So that becomes, that was this very clear statement from a child who was left intact and felt very comfortable in the locker room. So, I mean, not everybody's going to feel that way, but I think that is the truth. I don't think what he expressed was, if they are looking, they would have to have a lot of courage to be able to say something and make fun of me.
Yeah.
Because then I could retort with, what are you looking at my penis for?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I'm going to share something really personal here. Little boys play with their penises all the time.
Right.
They never grow out of that phase, actually. But, as they get older, we tell them about privacy and things that we do in front of other people and things that we don't. And with one of my sons, I asked him to stop playing with himself when we had company over at our house one day, and he started to cry, and he came and sat in my lap and whispered in my ear, I have to play with it now because one day it will be like Daddy's and I won't be able to. And I said, I hugged him so tight, and I said to him, oh no, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen to you.
Oh, he interpreted that somewhere along the line it would look different.
It would look different, and he wouldn't have any foreskin to play with, So that was really instructive to me that, yes, they do notice differences between their bodies and their father's bodies, but they don't necessarily interpret them the way we might expect them to. He didn't say, I want to look like Daddy.
Right.
He was afraid that was going to happen to him.
So lastly, Melissa, because we're going to wrap this up, though I feel like it could go for a lot longer and maybe we'll do more in the future. What is your website?
Well, actually, I have a new one.
Good.
The website for my own business is agentlewelcome.com, which means more to me since I drew this boundary. But I just started a new business with two doula friends, Heather McLeese-Fraser and Kelsey Irvin. And our new website, which goes live next week, is openarmsbc.com.
Great. And would people be able to find information on one or both of those about your class?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for coming in to talk with us.
Thank you so much. So good to see you.
I think that this is something that, I just want to express that we're not trying to tell you as doulas either, or as many of you are mothers yourself, to feel like you have done something wrong or you didn't do it right, or please try not to be on a defensive about this. This is really based in information, and your comments to us are more than welcome. Your feedback, how you've dealt with this with circumcision in particular, or have you, or is this giving you room to think that, this is something I do need to investigate more? And that's why we really welcome this conversation, Melissa, and your journey through the experience as a professional doula, a certified professional doula. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. And I would like to reiterate that I am not interested in shaming anyone or making anybody feel bad. I firmly believe that we all make our own best decisions for our children, and we make them out of love, and we make them with the best information that we have at the time. What I am interested is getting the best information to as many people as possible.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I just want to say that sitting here very quietly has been Melissa's mom, Tina, who is here visiting from the UK. So we just want you to say hello.
Hello, and I've learned a lot too.
So thanks for coming, both of you, and we'll see you around.
Thank you for having us.
Okay.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Stay tuned for our tip.
Well, that was great.
That was so great.
It was really wonderful to have this discussion, and I hope everyone feels more informed, maybe more questions in your head, less questions in your head, more clarity, maybe opened a can of worms. I don't know, but I think it was really wonderful.
Well, and we're so lucky to have Melissa still here to share one of her tips with us today. Melissa, what do you got?
Well, my tip for today as a doula is just wait. I know when I was starting out, I always wanted to rush right in and start doing a double hip squeeze and suggest changing positions. But now I really try my best when I arrive at somebody's home or I arrive at the hospital to sit down and sit on my hands and wait and see how I'm going to be needed for that particular family in that particular birth.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I love that. Thank you, Melissa. Thanks again. And thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for listening.